Hi, I'm Sarah Widera, Sports Communication, PR and Content Specialist.
Hey, I'm Ben Parsons. Welcome to the Playa Power podcast. Today we're talking comms with Sarah. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's talk, how do people make basic mistakes in the comms world through your eyes from the athlete perspective?
From the athlete perspective, I think the biggest mistake is probably silence, actually. I think in comms, and especially in sports, comms, PR, owning the narrative and taking control of a situation is really important. I think firstly to get on the front foot and to establish exactly what is needed to be said from the outset. I think that's a really strong moment for an athlete to take ownership of a situation. I think silence can really just mean so many different things with having the media wheel spinning in terms of, oh, it's an admission of guilt, they're not saying anything, this must have happened or whatnot. But if you can get out there quite quickly with something, I think that really means that you're driving that position from the get-go.
So if you're an athlete and you're junior, 15, 16, or you're 25, how do you build those people? How do you find them? Where do you start?
Well, I think it starts with having a trusted network. Obviously, that probably starts with family or some sort of family member that is close to you, is on the journey with you. But then I think obviously you need to branch out and find these specialists who are really looking after your brand, essentially, and potentially your family don't know much about that topic and the comms space or the PR space. And I think it probably comes from a lot of different avenues. I don't know if there's there's no like Teledex to find these people. I think it's more about making those personal connections, talking with a lot of people. Maybe it's an introduction that comes from management or your agent, but I think you need to talk to a lot of people. It's about networking. I think that's hugely important. Whether you come from a recommendation through another athlete's management, or I think it's really just about talking. It's not like a really easy process, I don't think. I think you need to find someone that speaks your language and someone that you really gel with on that level. Otherwise, I think any kind of relationship like that will be difficult. And I think that you need to really trust that person and have a good gut feeling.
Are you Googling them? Like, are you ringing you and saying, hey, I'd like to have a coffee?
Yeah, why not? I mean, I don't know if you can Google, but like, I think in this day and age, everyone's taggable, right? So especially in social media, you can see what agents or what agencies are working with certain athletes or organizations, and you can literally go on a bit of a hunt yourself and see, hey, I really like what such and such athlete is doing, or I love the promotions they're in, or the endorsements they're doing. I wonder who's behind that. And more often than not, that agency or that PR firm or comms company will be tagged. And that is actually a really good way to see hard and fast who is behind the success of some of these athletes.
You're 15 and they ring you, or somebody like you,
Yeah.
you have a coffee. Are you charging them for the coffee?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
I
so
think there's got to be an element at the beginning where you're building a relationship, and you can't monetize that. I don't think that's the right approach. It doesn't start a good tone for the athlete or for yourself. It puts you in a bad light, I think. Fundamentally, it's about personal relationships. And at the start, that needs to be organic. It can't be bought, no matter how big the coffee is, you know. It needs to be really organic and something that flows naturally. And I think at the beginning, you need to just meet people. And I think agencies should have enough awareness that a younger athlete needs that trust and that safe space without the thought of, oh, my parents are paying for this by the hour or something. I think it needs to start at the, foundations and have that open discussion with no strings attached.
Okay, when you're an athlete and you're in your career, and we tend to be pessimistic around issues management, like, issues arise, there's a certain process, and then ultimately the athlete says sorry, and then we all tend to move on, because in Australia and New Zealand, we like people that apologise and they're not above us. What do you do when an issue's break? Like when something goes wrong for the athlete, can you give us some behind the scenes what the process is in the background for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first steps really are to establish the situation, get all the information gathered, what's actually happened, what's being said already. And I think that's a really crucial first step because knowledge is power, right? From there, you need to assemble this team of people that you trust and really try and craft something that you want to put out. And I think, as I said earlier, being silent is not always a great thing. But if you are going to speak, it needs to be with authenticity and also with accuracy. You can't jump the gun and get it wrong. That's really a road crash there. You need to have all the facts. You need to feel strong in your position. And then I think you can begin to craft holding statements. I think they're really important if you need to buy yourself more time.
Can you explain a holding statement?
Yeah, so perhaps it's like a template of something you've got pre-prepared that you're happy with. And it says, such and such, we are aware of such and such situation. We are looking into this with our team. More information will follow. It's literally just to say, hey, we acknowledge you. We can see what's out there. We know what's being spoken about. We are aware of it. We're working on it, but we're not going to come out and say something straight away without all the facts and without working with our team behind the scenes first.
Now, you come from one of the greatest chanting sports of the world, football background. When an athlete is being heckled consistently, and a lot of codes suffer this, and then one day an athlete might snap, and we've seen that recently in a lot of different sports. What is your advice? I know lots of people say don't let it get to you.
Yeah, well, we're human, right?
We often see provoked situations with athletes globally, and they'll have an altercation with a fan, and most people just tell them to don't do that. What's your advice in an issues management position around those things?
I think what people need to remember is that everyone's human, and you can suppress these chants or these taunts as much as you can, but at some point it will bubble over. But you obviously, if you react in a situation, it's something that's uncontrollable, and if it happens on the field or during the game, then it is what it is, right? Obviously, you would try as much as you can not to react, but if it does happen, I think honesty and transparency is absolutely king. If that person could potentially front a press conference after the game and be really open and transparent and be like, hey, look, this was being said and this has got to me, and we're going to look into steps of how we can help eradicate this kind of behavior, and I just wanted to come out and say that the way I reacted in that situation probably wasn't correct, and I probably should have restrained myself, but at some point I'm human and it's affecting me. But let's learn from this and say that this is something that needs to change, and it starts now.
We've swam around in the negative issues side. Let's go to the other side of the pool and talk about the positivity of what PR can actually do for you as a brand, right?
Yeah.
So why do PR departments exist? Start with the basics.
I think it's really to help tell your story, to get your message out there, and basically to give you more dimensions, more layers. People might know you as a footballer, a cricketer, a swimmer, something. But what they want to know, what the public crave, is to know more about someone as a personality and what makes them tick outside of potentially what they do. And I think a PR's job is to give both sides. It's to showcase a fantastic athlete's ability and skill and their performance, but also to shine a light on the fact that what are they capable of outside of this, or what do they stand for, or what are their passions, or what philanthropy things are they interested in. So I think it's providing multi-dimensions to an athlete. So going beyond, I think, the field or the pitch, court, whatever. I think it's about driving promotion to that person and helping them absolutely maximize their time in the sun.
And what does it do for them? If you do good PR, what does it actually do for them?
Well, I think it elevates their brand. It makes them more likable. And I think people gravitate to people that are seen to be genuine and transparent and open and relatable. I think that's a big thing. You can see, this person really cares about that or this. They're not going to do this endorsement because they don't stand for that. So you can see, you can put the right things in front of someone and it really shows their personality, and it shows what they're interested in, what their causes are. So
athlete, coaches, your priority is your export, should you make time for PR?
I think absolutely. I think it goes hand in hand, especially in this day and age when we have so much digital and social communication. I think it's potentially not enough anymore just to be really great at your sport. I think you can, but I think there is much more power in maximizing your potential also off the field. And I think that's really important in terms of career prospects and life after sport. You know, you could tap into areas or have opportunities in areas that maybe other people don't get because of your sports stardom. And perhaps you get to explore those areas while you're still in it to further your career afterwards.
If you're an athlete that doesn't want to do PR, and that's normally because of your parents or your early childhood learnings or your coaching early on, what do you say to those people that are sheepish or probably a bit insecure about, hey, I don't really want to do X, Y, Z, whether it's a magazine or a newspaper or TV or radio interview?
I think it's about firstly listening to them and really knowing their limitations. You're never going to push someone into something they don't want to do. It's going to be so disingenuous and really weak. I think basically listening is very, very important. And I think you could just softly introduce things to them. Put them in situations where they do feel comfortable or where the environment is very controlled, or it's a really trusted journalist or someone that they know, or some environment where they feel really comfortable and you can help them navigate that. I think they probably do need to be pushed a little bit because they probably find that once they dip their toe in, it's actually not so bad. It's kind of that fear factor. And I think if you can softly introduce some of these elements, they probably find that, okay, actually it's not so bad. Doesn't mean you have to be on the cover of this and that and doing an interview here and breakfast there and da-da-da. But I think if you can slowly introduce some mediums and make them more comfortable, that they'll come into their own a little bit.
How important is PR for brands that spend in sport?
Oh, that's a big question. Yeah, hugely. I think there are so many layers these days to brands and what they're doing and what they're putting out and what they stand for. It's more than the logo on the shirt. It's who they are as a company and as an organization. And again, you need a team of people being able to help you tell that story while the others can focus on the product. There are so many layers to it these days, and I think PR is the way to get the message out there and control that message, but also showcase the good behind a brand.
So if you're an athlete that makes a mistake and you have brand partners, how do you think you communicate the mistake to them?
Yeah, I think when we're going back to talk about that close circle at the very beginning, I think they're really the next layer out, right? You need to control it from your inner circle, and then you need to go to them and you need to inform them. And they might want to do something with you, or it's you take the first step in communicating it how you want to. But I think all I've learned in my 15 years is that information is key. Don't keep them in the dark. I think that's, they may very well be happy for you to take the lead on the situation, but knowledge is power. And if they're hearing about this third hand or it gets leaked to the media or something, then they're going to be really annoyed, and rightly so. So I think information and informing them quite soon, when we spoke about that immediacy, I think that's really key, even if it's just to let them know that it's going on.
An athlete that has a brand partner, they make a mistake, informing a brand, right? So you've got a brand that's trying to protect their brand and reputation.
Yeah.
They've got a bunch of resources. If they've signed an ambassador deal with that ex-athlete, they obviously want the best for the athlete because it makes them look good. Are you tapping into their resources, like the brand's resources, or are you navigating your own message without their assistance?
I think it depends on the relationship and how big the athlete is and the brand. I think there's so many factors, but I think if it's a long partnership and a very trusted partnership, I think you can definitely take advice. But I think you still need to heed that advice and hear what they have to say, absolutely, because as you said, that brand will have a whole team of people employed to deal with those situations. But ultimately, they're thinking about the brand and you need to think about yourself. So that's really important. That's where your inner circle and your personal PR and comms team come into play because they have your best interest at heart.
we've seen over the years, athletes have a PR disaster where they think they're doing the right thing at the time and their advisors or friends or family members tell them it's the right thing, and it's an unmitigated disaster. And I don't want to name names on this yet. After you've made the mistake on a PR side, what do you do there? Like if you go and do an interview that wasn't right and it positions you poorly, or you've been associated with people that you thought were decent people and they weren't, what do you do?
Well, I think from a PR perspective with an athlete and that relationship, you would hope that your PR representation have very good relationships with the media, and that's fundamental for a PR firm. To the point where you could approach that journalist, or you could pull them aside after and be like, hey, I don't think they quite understood this, or they've not adequately expressed what they wanted to. They may have used a couple of wrong word choices or misconstrued, and something could easily be turned into a headline. Be like, hey, can we cut this, or can we talk about this? I think that's really important, and that's where you need someone like a comms PR rep to really listen into those interviews and be like, hey, let's maybe talk about this one. And that comes down to those relationships. We
used to give journalists a bunch of exercises like that when they were, cadets.
Yeah.
And we'd say, like, read the newspaper out loud to practice, script reading, and then, look in front of the mirror. Now you can use your phone, do vocal exercises to become better at media training.
Yeah.
Go into, though, time in front of camera or microphone always makes you better. And it's exactly like practicing for your chosen sport, becomes better. If you have a sport and you actually have a media department, are you pestering them?
Absolutely. I think basic media training should be offered to everyone. And it's fundamental these days. If you can articulate yourself, it's such a big win for any brand or club, and for yourself to be able to express yourself in a way you want to is hugely important. And they can help with that. They should be helping with that.
Go to a sport that is low on resources.
Okay.
What do you do there?
Well, I think a really good idea, and I know that I would have benefited with this as a young journalist, is why not couple up these young athletes with young journalists and have a program where they can learn from each other. They can practice interviewing, and the athletes can also practice responding, being on camera, being in that situation, knowing that it's a safer space because both sides are learning. I think that's a really cool idea, and I think there's obviously a lot of young, talented people wanting to break into sports media that would absolutely love or jump at that opportunity as well. So I think it's about creating new avenues as well.
If you're an athlete and you're training and you're building your comms and you're trying to be great off the field and off the track, what do you do for your PR plan to build your brand through public relations?
I think it's about starting small. Do what you're comfortable with, but then see what you can add on month by month, what more exposure you can get. Ultimately, it's about putting your name and your face out there. You can start small and then build it up, and eventually someone can help you with that. But I think it's also a case of the more you're seen, the more you're in demand as well.
With PR and issues management, when you're going through the crisis, people often don't want to hear what you've got to say in terms of when they've made the mistake because they haven't gone through the emotion of processing it, whatever it is. I've been in situations with athletes. Is there a fast way to track those emotions when an issue's happen and they're in denial about it, and then they go through the loathing stage and all of that? Have you ever worked with an athlete to help them through that process in a more fast track? Because there's lots of administrators that have gone through that issue in recent times as well.
Again, it comes back to human nature, and I'm not sure it's really natural or doable to fast track that. But I think you just have to have the necessary processes in place, and that comes with the pre-planning, right? So you've got some things built out, templates or these holding statements or scenario planning. It's hard to scenario plan because obviously you don't want to think the worst of an athlete or what they could or maybe would do. But I think the fundamentals are there, and if you can be prepared and they know what's coming, and they can plug in those processes, I think it might be an easier flow for them. But controlling emotions is always going to be difficult. I think you keep that potentially out of the spotlight, but be there for them as well. It's not just a business, it's a person, right? And that's PR number one. It's about relationship building and building trust.
When you're building a brand, in basic advice is you're trying to build your brand up. So what you're trying to do is, if you like X, whatever X is, you're trying to find someone with a slightly more authority in the position of X and then collaborate with them to build content for social media. But that really came from PR. Originality is if you can build your brand up, it's worth more money as an individual athlete. And the more money it's worth, the more athletes can earn from brand sponsorships. Is that the same with sports administrators? Do they feel the same way about building their brand and reputation in the same way? Do they?
I think for the big administrators, they are under so much scrutiny and they really can't afford to put a step wrong. I think it's really important that they are able to communicate exactly what they stand for and what they bring to the organisation. That needs to be managed really carefully because, they're not performing on the field, they're, in the office and they're making the decisions, but their decisions really reflect upon everyone in the organisation, for the sport, for, the greater good. So they need to be really careful in their positioning and remain authentic and true to themselves if they're to succeed in that position. I think they need to have a degree of likability as well. No one likes a villainous leader, but it's really important for them as well because in a sense, while they're not on the field, they're still performing and they're still being judged.
So if you're an athlete, is one of the PR opportunities doing stuff with your administrator?
Basically, they've got their pick of maybe 10 internships, they could view them as, on their doorstep, right? You sometimes see athletes going and doing these internships externally, but why do they need to leave the club? They can pick off one by one, as you said, go to the marketing team, go to the communications department, go to the legal team, just sit in, listen, say, hey, do you mind? I bet they wouldn't. But that's a really nice way, a great way to have all these resources right on your doorstep without having to do too much, make too much effort to learn something new or to see a different perspective.
What I'm trying to do is talk about character depth, because characters create relatability to PR opportunities and content that you create from all of it. Yeah. That's where I'm trying to see that you don't have to be full gloss. It's okay to have the sweet and the sour.
Well, to be honest, what makes you so relatable as an athlete to, the everyday fan is just being normal, your normal life. It's what every great documentary is. It's behind the scenes. People have this innate interest about what's happening. What are the things that we don't get to see? That's what people want to see. They need to have this element of just being real, being authentic, showing their true selves. I think they need to not be afraid to do that. Sure, they'll have their glam pictures, their awards nights, whatever, but show the other side of it. You'll become more relatable and you'll find yourself, you're more marketable. Because people can actually say, oh, I can see myself in this person.
I'll use Beckham as an example, the documentary. His relatability to his parents is probably the one thing I thought was really clever in their story narration, was everyone's got parents, everyone's got a relationship. He's got a dad that was a bit of the tyrant, the mum that was the soft, loving human. Again, characters within the story arc that everybody can relate to, whether it's a sibling, parents.
100%. People are fascinated by people and relationships and who's in people's lives and what they're doing and what influence they have or where they might learn something or how someone is able to relax with a certain other person or show a different side to them. I think that's just innately human, right? So I think if an athlete can be true to themselves, not film everything, and nobody wants to see everything, right? But I think you need a good balance.
In music, when they do things, they'll often, if you go to a listening session or to watch something that's exclusive, you have to hand over your phone. As you walk in the room, they zip it into a black bag and you don't get it back until after the event, so there's no photography. I've always been fascinated why that doesn't happen in sport for Mad Monday, after parties, all of these things.
Yeah.
How do you guard yourself if you're an athlete these days?
Yeah. Look, I think it's hugely tricky, and as much as you trust the people around you, can you? I mean, you have to look out for number one all the time. And I think, I'm sorry to say, but being an athlete or being in the spotlight and being on that pedestal means that sometimes you might have to miss out on some of these things, because can you trust everyone around you or just random people in these situations? If you can trust yourself, obviously, to conduct and behave in a way that is befitting your personality and your true self. As an athlete, you have a responsibility to act in a way that is true to you and true to the situation. And it comes with being an athlete. You can act like a crazy party animal, when you retire if you want. But I think in that moment, you have a responsibility to focus on the job at hand to an extent. Obviously, you're still going to have fun and whatnot, but you need to trust the people around you. And perhaps, I think, key is not to put yourself into a situation where something bad could come from it.
I agree that athletes sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
And that's the path you chose in life, and that's some of the things you have to do. A counter argument I receive from a lot of athletes is they are human and they need to let off steam.
Sure.
How do you do it in a controlled, safe environment because I keep seeing photos and leaking of videos and things that bring lots of great sports talent completely undone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I guess it comes back to that trusted circle and knowing that you're sitting in a holiday villa with a group of people that you inherently trust. I think that's key. You need to surround yourselves with people that are like-minded, understand the situation, understand the gravitas of a bad headline for you as an athlete, and that's your career. I think you need to be careful. You need to be mindful. But yeah, obviously we are human. We want to relax and enjoy. I just think it's an unfortunate situation that you will always be under scrutiny to some extent. I think you just need to have a really trusted circle to begin with.
So are you talking to your trusted circle about this? Because if they don't know what they don't know and they're being innocent and they take a photo and upload it or do something silly, are you giving them the...
I think you need to, especially with maybe like your parents or something who don't think, or people that aren't really wired to think that way. You're wired to think that way because it's all consuming in a sense. But people in your family or your circle may not actually really think about it and might just snap away happily or send something or this, that, the other. I think there is a conversation that needs to be had, absolutely, because they don't want to hurt you in any way either, but they might not be programmed the way to think that you are in terms of this video, this text, this whatever. It's about reminding the people in your circle that, hey, guys, we need to be mindful of what we're saying, what we're doing. Please, keep photos to a minimum, or, don't share anything or don't post anything publicly that you wouldn't want out there. I think that's really important.
Big takeaways for you that you really want to drum home out of this podcast to the athlete, what are they?
I think it's owning the message and controlling the narrative. I think that's so important. I've seen it so much in my career where this delay in messaging and delay in communicating causes more drama than what the actual issue is. I think if you can be on the front foot and control that message, control the narrative as it evolves as well, update, but keep people informed, that's absolutely key. Because at the end of the day, you are seen as a stronger individual and a stronger brand by taking that heat straight up, dealing with that situation straight away and not letting this speculation, rumour and the rumour mill fester away. The longer you leave it, the longer you have left things unsaid and people wondering, and they make up their own stories. So I think, yes, speed is really important, but accuracy is just as important. So it's fine to get that message out, but make sure it's correct. So don't skip on the accuracy for the speed. Make it a balance, but make sure you're controlling that narrative because ultimately it's your brand.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.